Hi everybody, I hope that you are all well and enjoying Good Friday. And obviously if you don't see this video today, then I hope you're enjoying your Easter weekend. I have now finished work for a week and a half. I finished Wednesday was my last day in, so yesterday I was meant to clean the house. I didn't. I sat and I read all day and it was wonderful. And then we've got the Easter weekend and then I've got all of next week off. So I am very, very happy to have a break from work and everything. And I'm especially happy for today. So because of the social distancing, as it were, the lockdown rule, should I say, relaxing here in the UK, it means that today I get to see my sister, my brother-in-law and my niece and nephew. And we're going to be in my mum and dad's garden doing the social distancing as we're meant to, but we're allowed to be in an outdoor space together for Easter, and that is absolutely amazing. I've only saw my sister in person twice in a year. Twice. So I get to spend the day with her today and I'm so excited. You know how much I love my family, and I really love my sister, and I'm so excited to see her today. So it's going to be a good day today. But before I get on with my day today, I need to talk about the book I've been reading this week, which is The Corset by Laura Purcell. And actually the top that I'm wearing is very appropriate. You can't really see it unless I pull it up, but it's one of these Shakespeare t-shirts. It's the last one that I bought, and it's a massive bloody handprint, and it says "Will these hands ne'er be clean" from Macbeth, and it goes appropriately with this book because it's about two women, a girl, well, she's a teenager, but she's a woman. So a woman called Ruth and a woman called Dorothea, or Dottie. And Dottie is a woman. She's quite higher class. She's got a comfortable life with her father. Her mother died when she was young, and she hopes to marry a man who she's fallen in love with, but her father's not very fond of him. And part of her charitable work that she does day to day includes visiting women in prison to spend time with them and such, and do what she can to help them, whether it be teaching women to write, teaching them to sew, that kind of thing, or just listening to their stories. And Ruth is one of the women who is being held in prison for killing her mistress. And Dottie becomes quite taken by Ruth and her story, and it sort of develops in the ways that Ruth is telling the story. Dottie's starting to research it, and she's kind of becoming obsessed with this case and trying to figure out what happened. Is Ruth lying to her? Is Ruth telling her the truth? Is Ruth a vicious murderer? Or is she not? Is she innocent? And the story is about these two women and their connections. So there's your overall synopsis. And as you'll know, unless if you haven't seen my other videos about Laura's works made this year, I came across Laura Purcell because my sister, who's also called Laura, read her 3 books last year and said, "Oh my God, you've got to really read this author's works." And so I read the first book of hers. I read was her 3rd novel, Bone China, and the second one I read, which was only a couple of weeks ago, was The Secret Companions. So this is The Corset is the book that sits in the middle. It's her second novel, and once again I've been reading it with my very good friend Sarah. We've had a really great time reading this one, just as with reading the previous read of The Silent Companions, and it was a very interesting read. Now, if you've seen my other reviews for The Silent Companions and Bone China, I talked a lot about how there's this constant like chill running through me, this feeling on edge, like I'm being watched. With this book, you don't get that. Instead, it kind of feels like you're in like a fever dream. You get these moments where, in these chapters, where it just kind, there's just ever so slightly like a ripple of something going on underneath, and then wham, you'll get hit with something like a really brutal thing, like almost like a PTSD thing, and then it'll calm back down again, or sometimes you'll just get bang, 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 bang. It's almost like you're constantly being hit and you can't quite breathe, and then suddenly it'll stop. And I love that about Laura's writing. I constantly feel like I need to question everything. And I actually got to a point where I sent a message to my sister. I was like, I figured it out. Yay, I did it. I think I was smart this time. I figured it out. And then my sister was like, you sure? And then I was like, when I got to the end of the book, I was like, oh man, I got that completely wrong. But I love that. I love that I can't predict what Laura is going to write next. I can't figure it out. But even the writing style is, in a way, though structurally, is quite different from her other books. I didn't feel cheated. I didn't feel let down. I loved the characters. I loved the settings. I loved all the events that happened. And the whole thing of, should I be trusting this narrative? Should I not be trusting this narrative? Who is being also other characters that they both come in contact with. Can I trust them? Can I actually trust what they're saying to me? I constantly was asking questions, and when I thought I figured it out, I got it completely and utterly wrong. So I absolutely loved that. It's very interesting because, as I said, with Ruth's story is really brutal. It is full on. There is a lot of dark shit happens with her story. With Dottie, is completely flipped. But I felt like, as I was reading Dorothea, should I say, but she's called Dottie as a nickname. I kind of felt throughout Dottie's story, there's something very, very low on the radar here that's building up, but it's not building up to the point where I can feel it and I'm like, it's becoming like, oh, kind of moment building up. I just felt like there is something dark underlining here, and I don't know what it is, but I can feel it. I didn't think it was necessarily going to explode, but the way in which Laura ended Dottie's story, wow. So much so, I actually think for a book ending, out of her 3 books, The Corset has the best ending. Even though I love the ending of The Silent Companions and Bone China, I think for the way in which she constructs the build-up and then whams that ending at you, I think The Corset has the best ending out of 3 books. But if you look at overall how it made me feel and the need to power on, like, I can't stop this roller coaster, I have to carry on with it. I feeling kind of nervous at night, kind of thing. The Silent Companions is the best one. Like The Corset, I was like reading like 10. I've read it over 4 days. So for the first 3 days, I read 10 chapters, and I easily went to bed, and I was, totally fine. And then yesterday, as I said, I was reading all day, and it was like 150 pages left, and I just read it, all of those pages in one go. But yeah, I was going to bed totally fine, and but with Silent Companions, I was waking up at every little thing. I read 220 pages in one day because I just couldn't stop the roller coaster that was happening. It was full pelt. So this one was pulled back, but my God, the ending was brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. If I had to rate them from best to worst, worse, and there is no worse for me for Laura's books, because they are all brilliant. I think it would be in the published order. So number 1 is Silent Companions, number 2 The Corset, number 3 Bone China, overall. But what I especially love about this book, and she refers to it in the acknowledgements, and she leaves the name of the individual for you to go off and research. There is a character in this called Miriam. I'm not going to tell you her story. I don't want to spoil anything. But with Miriam, she is actually, and various other characters are named after and inspired by a real Victorian teenager. I'm not going to say the name because obviously I don't want anyone to Google what happened and the outcome, why she is known. But she acknowledged this particular teenager and said Miriam's story is inspired / based on this Victorian teenager who you can read all about at the British Library, and states her name. I love that. There's, I always love whenever you have historical fiction, but when you have historical fiction which acknowledges something from our reality, even though there is possibly like supernatural elements and such with the, because when Laura's writing, she brings in so much stuff of what's reality and what isn't, what's possible supernatural or whatever, where does our world end and a possible another one begin. You never quite know what's going on, and so to bring in an element of this is a real person, this is what happened to them, or this is my interpretation writing of what happened to them, and to present that the way that she did, I think that the person who Miriam's story is inspired by would be proud of what Laura did in presenting her story. And we should never forget all of those stories from the past. We should know their names. We should know what they went through. So yeah, I'm really bravo Laura for bringing her story to the forefront for this book. It was astonishing. I will say this is probably the most brutal. No, I'm gonna say, yeah, not probably. It is the most brutal out of the 3 books, because even though the Silent Companions had some messed up stuff in there, it was very psychological and, to do with that supernatural and it's this ghost and all that lot. It was spooky. It was dark. So it met that criteria. For Bone China, it was, a medical thing. And in a way, you can argue that some of this book is a medical thing, but not like Bone China. This had proper gory abuse. And there's one chapter to do with Ruth, which it when you read it. You do not forget easily. You do not forget easily. It's probably about, I don't know, a third of the way through the book. I read it on the first, it might have been on the first day of reading. Yes, because I think it was only like several chapters in. So yeah, it's not that far into the book, but that's like the first proper blow of brutality that you get. Really full up close and personal brutality, and it's like that's only one instance out of many. Very, graphic in your face stuff, but that is the most graphic, I would say. So it feels more welded in reality, but it has a sting in the tail. And my God, that sting was so good. The ending was brilliant, as I said. I can't stop gushing about this. Before I do reading, there's something also I want to say. In my previous video of Laura's work, I mentioned about her new book due out this year, and I was saying I think it's due out in the summer. I got that completely and utterly wrong. So overseas, it is due out on the 1st of June. Here, it's already been released. Sorry, Laura, I completely mucked up that for my my previous video. So it was released here in the UK in hardback at New Year, and it'll be released in hardback in America on the 1st of June. I don't know about other territories. I just know how it's the 1st of June because Sarah, my reading buddy, she's in America, so she was able to tell me when we talked about it the other day. And that because I've got all of Laura's books in paperback, I'm one of those people, I have to wait for the paperback so then it'll look nice on my shelf. Like, I'm desperate to read the prequel to The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, but the paperback doesn't come out until I think September, October, and all my other books of his are in paperback, my Pillars collection, so I'm like, I gotta wait for the paperback. And the paperback of Laura's next book is due out here in the UK also in October. So those are two books that I'm definitely going to be buying and also will be added to this year's reading list, which I'm excited about. So yeah, so sorry for any confusion with the release date of her brand new book, but here in the UK it's already out. In America it'll be released in June, and the paperback will be released in the UK in October. So shall I do a bit of a reading for you from the Corset? So this is, because there's so much that happens in this book, I've had to choose a really early chapter. So this is Ruth when she's in her early teens, and she is basically working with her mum. Her mum does sewing for a living, and her dad is a painter, and her mum at this point, she's heavily pregnant, and she needs help basically with sewing, and Ruth, she's discovered, is really good at sewing. So she's kind of taken Ruth on as a bit of an apprentice for her, and to help her meet her quotas in order for them to eat, because even though her father does painting, he doesn't really get commissioned to do much, and so it's a pretty tough situation. So this is Ruth sewing with her mother. I'm going to read the whole chapter because it's only a short chapter. It's 1, 2, 3 and a bit pages, so I might as well just read the whole chapter instead of just read 2 pages and stop. So okay. Pins and needles ran up my legs. I scooted round on my knees, trying to draw the chalk line straight on the bolt of calico. You need to start the pattern closer to the edge, Ma called from the window, otherwise you'll waste material. I nodded, but I didn't obey her. We have been using rather a lot of material recently. I'm sorry, Ma, this is new to me. Ma rubbed the bridge of her nose, then returned to the stocking she was seaming. I understand that, dear. I would bend to do it myself if I could, but I know the baby's too big. Always the baby. At least this time it was doing me a favour. You might think it was a shabby trick making waste on purpose, but if Mrs. Metyard and her customers could dress in silk and lace, I reckoned I was entitled to scrap of calico from her stores. Calico was the perfect lining. I finished my marks and dusted off my hands. There. Good. Could you cut it out? Reaching for the fabric scissors, my hand brushed something smooth. I turned my head. It was a scrap of peach satin entwined seductively around the scissors. My fingertips began to tingle. Such a soft, sweet colour, warming. A rose opening on a spring day. I wanted to touch it, wanted to be it. Cautiously, I picked up the scissors and the satin together, holding them close to my apron. The light is poor today, Ma sighed. Your father will be having a hard time in your studio. It is so important for him to render the shadows correctly. Carefully, I slipped the material into my apron. I felt a bit brighter, a little more beautiful, just having it about my person. Can we see to cut, Ruth? Only my scissors answered with their sharp snip. A bit wider than that, darling, for the seams? Yes, Ma. Seams be damned. What had I in mind was more important? Cutting out panels was long and laborious work, especially in the groom. The scissors grew heavy. Their metal handles bit into the skin around my fingers. I fought to see the chalk lines through tired eyes. My pupils felt drier than parchment, sprinkled with sand. I thought I had some rushlights down here, but the box is empty, Ma frowned, looking across the room. And do you know what became of our matches? I couldn't find them in the kitchen. No. Should I run out and get some more? I offered. Well, perhaps you should. You're struggling to cut that. Ma laid down her stocking and rummaged for a coin. Pocket after pocket turned out empty. Of a sudden, she stopped and clutched her stomach. Ma, what is it? She didn't heed me. She was just listening to something deep inside. Ma? She shook herself. All's well. It's the baby wriggling. Go upstairs and put your bonnet on, dear. I'll find some money by the time you come down. It was just what I wanted to hear. Pa was in his studio. I listened cautiously as I mounted those last few steps, afraid that he might come out. There was a clink and a sigh from within, then silence. I darted into my room, shut and locked the door behind me. The loose floorboard was beneath my bed, hidden by the chamber pot. Dust made me sneeze as I scrambled about and hooked my fingers under the slat. There, glinting in the box, was my hoard. Ma's matchbox, a handful of rushlights lay in the nest of pilfered material. Fabric layered upon fabric, soft and smooth, silky and rough, a kaleidoscope of colour. My greedy hands caressed it all. It was a hodgepodge of harlequin wardrobe, but it was mine. The mission was simple. Remake the corset. Remake myself. Sorry, I should have explained that. She got into a situation where she was being bullied and the bully broke her corset and she kind of was like, oh, I'm going to remake my corset. I'm going to get revenge on you. So that's what she's doing. Every night I worked in secret and every night the garment became a little more real. This corset was taking a different shape than the last one. There were fewer gussets, shorter straps. It wrapped serpentine around my torso, tight. My busk was ruined. Nothing in my stash would serve for bones, but I found I didn't need them. I could fortify the corset with cording, hessian, twill, and buckram. Its strength would be mine, my labour, my stitches, my blood. I laid the satin in place and let down the floorboard. As I climbed to my feet, I remembered Rosalind Oldacre's face that night. Once again, I heard the snap of cane bones and the crack of my own shattered pride. How long will it take for them to break? Not this time. I vowed there and then to create something as strong as my rage. I would make more than a corset, more than a garment. I'd sew something that no power on earth could break. See, I just love how, especially with this one, it's so interesting how she plays with the light and airiness of privilege versus the darkness and decrepit poverty, and the beauties that each find, and how you can have someone who's up there very high in society, high in riches, high in wealth, the beauty, the light, the satins are with a very dark undertone, and then you can have someone who's born in the darkness, in poverty and horribleness, and have something that's so beautiful. And that's what these two women represent. And the way that they balance each other, and this story that brings the two together, it's just so well written, so well done. I'm loving it. I'm loving Laura's writing. I'm so excited to read her fourth book. I haven't had an author capture me like this for every single one of their works for quite some time. So I'm very excited going forward and have such an interesting writer of Gothic literature, of historical Gothic literature, to just do what she does. I'm like, where the hell did you come from? It's stunning. It is stunning. I've just, it's so interesting. This one in particular, how I said how grounded it is, but the way that she reflects the truth of society with this possible otherworldly depth and connections, and oh my god, I need to stop gushing. I need to stop gushing. But basically, I bloody loved it. I'm in awe of Laura Purcell. I am in absolute awe of her. What more can I say? I better stop there then. So, would I read this again? Yes. All of Laura's books aren't going to be leaving my bookcase. I love it. Now that I've finished the 3 books, I really want to get hold of the audiobooks and listen to them. These stories are just so good. I won't be able to let go of them. I won't be able to. Would I read any more of Laura's books? Well, as I said, yes, I'm desperate to get hold of her 4th book, but I have to wait until October. I can be patient. I will do that. And what's good, actually, when it's released in October, me, my sister, Laura, and Sarah are all going to read the book at the same time. So it'll be a group of us that are going to be reading. So I'll have 2 reading buddies for that one. That'll be really interesting for us to read that one all together. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yes, I would. But I would just flag that this one is, it's very grounded in reality, but it's also rather brutal. So I just give just a bit of a heads up that there's some real brutal stuff in this book. But nothing that I feel like would be triggering. Is just very in your face. And some people might just feel a bit uncomfortable. So that's why I just flag it. So yes, so that's my thoughts on the absolutely fabulous The Corset by Laura Purcell. So, have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave comments in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely up to you. I'll let you decide. And I'll be back with my thoughts on my next read, which is the mammoth 880 pages of The Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, the last book in the Dark Artifices trilogy. So as you can probably guess, with it being Good Friday, I'm not going to be able to get this review of this to you this weekend, but most likely I'll be back in a week's time with this review. Given that I've got the week off, we'll see how long it takes for me to get through. But yeah, I'll be back with my thoughts on The Queen of Air and Darkness as soon as I'm done. All right, guys. Bye.